good evening. It is Fly Alyssa with Cockpits and Cocktails. Tonight we have myself and your other host, flyGIRL Kelley, and we have a extra special guest tonight. We have Lyndse Costabile, I think.
Yes.
Ish. Embarrassing. I don't know if it's Lyndse or Lyndse or
It's just Lyndse. It's just the same as any other Lyndse, but
yeah.
It's just a different spelling. Yeah.
Your mom got creative.
She wanted to make sure that I found nothing with my name on it. So
Yeah.
my middle name, it's terrible.
Yeah.
Yours, Alyssa, is the same way. Like you have the 2 L's, the 2 S's.
And not an I, and it's just like, Mom, you really screwed me over here.
I just got Alyssa and Beth, and I was like, oh wait, that's like Elizabeth.
That's a whole story in itself. At least I don't get called Kelley all the time, you know?
Oh, it's all right. I have a first last name.
People will be like, oh, how's Kelley? And I'm like, who?
Yeah.
Aren't you friends with her? No.
I don't know what Kelley.
Lyndse Costabile.
However you want to say it.
Excited that you were able to do this. I didn't expect you to be able to do it so soon, because I thought, well, sounded like when I saw you at Sun and Fun, you needed some time really to be able to do it, but I'm glad it worked out.
How have you guys been since after Sun and Fun?
Busy.
Busy.
Yeah. I think we're all in the same boat. We're like all like in a million different things. So It's not just like, oh, we go to a 9 to 5 and like, here we go. You know, it's just, yeah.
Yeah.
I hear
But
you on
good.
that one.
You know, I mean, it's fun. It's sometimes just juggling everything is hard sometimes. I don't know where I'm supposed to be half the time.
Thank you so much for coming on tonight. I'm super excited to dive into all that you do. You are not a 9 to 5 kind of girl, so I can't wait to actually figure out what you do.
I know.
9 to 5 is boring. I can't do that. I can't do the same thing every day.
Same. I think we are all in the same boat here. We just like have these thought bubbles like going off at all times, and we're not no women. I think we are yes women, and in all the good ways. But
yes, I agree.
Right.
It's important to do that and to be adaptive.
What would you say like your actual title is? I feel like it's consulting or aviation marketing or something of that nature. What would your official title be?
The way that I like to explain what I do or my title. So I'm the principal consultant for my company, which is called FundAv Consulting. Some people like to say FundAV, but it's FundAv Consulting. So we put the fun back in aviation and fundraising, and we predominantly focus on aviation companies and aviation related and STEM related nonprofits. So we do focus on marketing, media strategies. We do a lot of business development, corporate relations type roles, a lot of leadership level fundraising, capital campaigns. But we are very unique in that our company transitions a lot of our work to doing film and production. We actually do a lot with unmanned vehicles. So we're not just on the fixed wing or helicopter side. We actually just partnered with Leonardo Company, helping to launch their new training academy up in Northeast Philadelphia. So we have a big focus on the business and corporate aviation sector too. So we're really trying to get to the nuts and bolts of what really built aviation, which is general aviation, and maintaining that side of the industry, but also making sure that we safeguard it. So there's a lot of times that we touch on the legislative work. So we work closely with the National Business Aviation Association, among other aviation groups. And as you all know, ladies, we are of the alphabet industry. So the FAA to the EAA to the AOPA to the WAI. So, you know.
All the acronyms. One thing I hate about aviation, I hate an acronym. Like, can we just say what we mean here, ladies? Like, can we just do it?
Right.
I look at the IFR stuff and I'm like, hello, could you just talk about what we're talking about here? No, I don't want letters. Okay.
Where's that Aviation for Dummies book just to go through all the acronyms?
Yeah, I know.
Right. I did just find, like, when I was tabbing my FAR AIM, that there is an acronym chart. Who knew?
Yeah, I know.
Does anybody read it? Does anybody actually read it?
We do push it for sure, but yeah, it is. We are the acronym industry. It's so funny. Yeah. So you have to like dial it back sometimes when you start speaking that terminology to other people. Like, what are you saying?
That was one of the most intimidating parts when I first started flight training, actually. It was like they were just throwing acronyms at me like I was just supposed to know what they were. I don't know what these are.
We have our own like alphabet, right? So it's like, what are we talking about again? Like somebody will be like, oh, what about this? Blah, blah, blah.
Every sector of our industry has their own acronyms too. Like if you're on the maintenance, repair, overhaul side to, obviously business, corporate aviation sector to, all these different areas of aviation even have their own language.
I have to admit that I had absolutely no idea what you did. If I had to guess, like at every event that I wanted to be at.
You see her like in, the tower, and then you see her flying with Airshows, and then you see her over here in the Bose tent, and she's just everywhere, and it's really hard to track you down.
That's how I thought about you guys. Come on, really?
Let's bring it back. How did you even get into aviation? Was your family in it, or did you just stumble upon this career? Like, where did it start for you?
I've been flying in small airplanes since the early 2000s. But as a kid, I'm pretty sure at this point, like that I know I can definitely fly myself. Like if I really just tried to, just jump off a side ledge and but as a kid, I really did. I had this like dream of flight, and I would imagine myself always flying. And so I actually have another interesting story for another day, but I started a program called From Sacrifice to Soaring more recently. So right before COVID hit, a lot of people were saying, you should really tell your story. You should really have the opportunity to share the stories so other people can come forward and maybe share their untold stories of how they got into aviation that maybe came from a childhood and a background that maybe not so positive. And the reason I say that is because we all have faced various adversities. We've all faced things in our childhoods that we may not speak about always so publicly, but because of those things, flying for me was my escape away from it. Flying was the activity that I could do to rise above a lot of that hurdle or that obstacle. So in being able to share flight with people was the way to get others more comfortable with embracing themselves, finding themselves. How do you define yourself and where you want to go, even if it's not being a pilot and flying an airplane. So I actually, my introduction to aviation, my cousin and my uncle flying for the Air Force. And they were really the only ones more ingrained into aviation during my childhood. So my cousin is stationed in Hawaii now. We're very close and connect a lot about aviation and I get his advice on things. He actually flies Air Force, high-level Air Force officers and generals on the Gulf Stream. I'm very proud of him because he's really pushed me to maintain my role in aviation, supporting aviation. So first time I had a chance to kind of touch and see and feel aviation in the sense of flying was the early 2000s when I was going to college, and I had to hide it from my parents because they were not very supportive of me flying.
Oh wow!
So I had to work 3 jobs while in college just to afford some training in Pennsylvania. So I was going to college at a non-aviation school, but on the backside of that, flying.
Wow. Yeah.
And then they finally found out later in life, but now they understand, my passion for it and how it does actually serve and help other people. And that's what I'm doing with the From Sacrifice to Soaring program.
What does that entail?
So I have several industry partners on board. So there's Bose Aviation, Just Aircraft, Avfuel's been a big help. We have Cape Fear Aviation through my flight instructor, Elaine Humphrey, who's come forward. We actually do talk a lot about faith in flying, like women of their faith in flying. These organizations that have known me for years, they've known that a lot of the times I've put my own dreams of flight aside to funnel dollars and support and service other people's dreams of flight. So one of those examples is I was given the opportunity to help a young woman from Afghanistan fly solo around the world. Really, just instead of helping advise her, I actually fully ingrained myself into the program, ended up leading the program and all of the volunteers involved. It kind of became my life. I actually left Embry-Riddle, where I was working full time, to launch this flight and to make sure that it was successful and to make sure she was successful. It was like a full-time job, but in a very pro bono fashion. My life has been built on service and support and philanthropy. So a lot of times I'm one of those yes people where you need my help. Yes, I'll do it. But in doing so, I tend to put my own training and my own goals for flying aside, and then I have to come back to it. So, so this time with the From Sacrifice to Soaring, it was the industry coming and saying, Lyndse, now it's time that you focus on getting you done. so that you can continue to help people in a better form and in a flying format. So that's what this program is about. And we utilize the flying platform to help other people tell their story or to come forward about maybe what adversity they've faced that has prevented them from finishing a career, finishing a degree, and how can we help them finish those items in their life.
I think that's super amazing. I feel like we all kind of fall into that. Like, we always are quick to help other people and give advice and do whatever we can to help others. But then, like, sometimes, like, I know for me, I definitely I'm like, oh, they need my help. I'm going to go do that. I'm going to do a scholarship for someone else instead of like raising money for my own fund or whatever.
Yeah. We've talked about that.
Like,
yeah,
but that's part of inspiring and empowering other women. And I get more gratification from that than I'll ever get from doing myself.
Yeah.
I mean, my pilot's license was the most proud moment of my entire life, but what I've been able to do since then has been more substantial and profound than that will ever be. I mean, it's people like you that make this world keep spinning. It's just.
I know a lot of people ask me, I'm only so busy, and a lot of people are asking me, well, why are you so busy? It's like, well, I need to do this for this person and this for this person and this person, but they're like, well, you don't have to do that. I'm like, well, no, I don't, but
I'm trying.
I want to not do it. I want to do it.
Correct. Yeah. And I think that maybe you ladies would agree to this, but we all mentor a lot of people, right? We're always mentoring young people. And I even mentor individuals that are older than I am in a sense, because they're either kind of like returning back into aviation or coming back to flight training at a different, a non-traditional age range. And what I always tell them is that maybe you can agree here or not, is that I feel like aviation is a very unique industry in that we are connecting people in a different way. It is unique that we can have the format of flying and the freedoms of flying and the opportunity to get from point A to point B, to get to these air shows, to really connect. I mean, if you look right now where obviously we were shut down for this year and there were not a lot of events, is that the one industry that is starting to return events happens to be aviation. Yeah. So we're connecting people constantly.
As you can see, I'm wearing my commemorative Air Force shirt.
Yes, I see that.
I was trying to decide what to put on. I'm looking through my closet and I was like, oh, wait a minute. I could wear this because I know she's done some things with them. So can you talk a little bit about what you did or what you've done with them and what's been really significant for you and your role with them?
Sure. I actually have my commemorative Air Force hat, but it's in my closet. So
yeah.
We do partner with the commemorative Air Force quite a bit. So part of my job as, there's a principal consultant for my company, FundAv Consulting, is that we're a team, and there's several of us that help and manage certain roles with different clients of ours. And one of those clients happens to be the D-Day Squadron. So our role, there's three of us that actually manage the day-to-day operations, marketing, media, fundraising. We have a DC-3 society, so it's an established owners group, but also aircraft operator, pilots, mechanics of the particular airframe, the DC-3. So of the DC-3 is the D-Day Squadron. So the D-Day Squadron then partners with the commemorative Air Force. So when we're doing any flyovers, commemorations, just like we're getting ready to celebrate the 2-year anniversary, having returned these World War II aircraft back to Normandy 2 years ago for D-Day 75th. That's when we partner all together. So it's a very collaborative organization. It's a very collaborative mission. So anytime we do a notable flight mission, we partner on our marketing, we partner on our press releases, we partner on the aircraft, because the CAF actually has, they own and operate 2 of the DC-3s. That's all brother. That was discovered in the weeds in a field and restored out of Oshkosh. And then we have D-Day Doll. That's out of Riverside, California. So, and then we've got, 20 some other DC-3s that we work closely with, or C-47 variants that we work closely with to do these various commemorations that led us back to Normandy 2 years ago.
That must have been really cool. What's your favorite part of organizing events like that?
The veterans. I get to work with some of the coolest veterans, and we were just in Xenia, Ohio, a few weekends ago, commemorating Jim Pee Wee Martin, who turned 100 years old. Still living. He's still opinionated, still living.
Yeah.
He's awesome. He is just, he has a lot to say, but it's really getting a chance to just sit down with him and the last living Screaming Eagles. The Band of Brothers movie was created around, and hearing their stories, it's just unimaginable what they went through, especially because they were only 19, 20, 21 years old, flying these airplanes, jumping from these airplanes behind enemy lines. And so that's when I talk to young people when they want to complain today. I'm like, let me tell you a story. Let me talk to you about what the greatest generation did for you and why we need to keep maintaining that freedom and that spirit of paying honor and tribute to them, because they gave up so much for what we have today. So that's my favorite part is honoring and paying tribute to those veterans.
It seems so insane to me that these people were fighting wars, flying these aircraft, that they were 19 years old. Like, how many hours did they have before they were flying them? And how, and I always hear these veterans and things talking about, oh, well, when I was 19, I was paying 19 cents a gallon, or 10 cents a gallon. To think that they had to make these decisions, like, there weren't cell phones, they were in enemy fire, they were battling it out. Like, this is just so crazy to me. And to be able to recover those aircraft and have those people, we are so lucky to still have that part of our aviation culture. And and that's not going to be there forever. So we have to preserve that.
They're dying off and rapidly. And so the every moment that the D-Day Squadron and the Combative Air Force gets to honor them, to work closely with them, to get to fly with them, to take them flying. And some of them actually do fly our airplanes. They'll get in the cockpit with us. They'll second in command. We actually had the last living Pathfinder pilot that flew into Normandy right after midnight on June 6, 1944, Dave Hamilton. So when we commemorated 2 years ago, we did the full reenactment of D-Day, and we actually put him in one of the DC-3s, one of the C-47s, and he got to fly it and cross the English Channel. That was the last time that he crossed that English Channel, was 75 years prior.
Wow.
I can only imagine the grin on his face and the tears flowing at the same time, just how, unfathomable that moment.
Remarkable. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We just interviewed Kat Healy, actually.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, she was our last.
Yeah, she was talking a little bit about the event too. I really, really like her, and she's kind of got the same attitude you have. She really wants to keep, honoring these veterans as long as possible, and she was there in Xenia, and she was like, oh, it's just the greatest thing to be able to do this for these people,
I got lots of pictures of her. And then the ADT team, because they're great. And to have, there was a very unique event, I'm sure she told you, is that we had 5 of the parachute teams there in groups there, from ADT to Phantom to X-35 to Liberty Jump Team to RCPT, and a lot of those, and the Golden Knights were there too. So they were all with us in Normandy. So it was really to have to unite again, to do that in that way, in that manner, for that type of celebration was very unique. So we were just happy to be a part of it and have 3 airplanes a part of it.
You don't actually set these events up, correct? You just help organize it once it's set up.
We do help organize it. This particular one, we sort of co-organized with W and our vets. So so led by their team, and then we work closely with media, marketing. We do a lot of this as just like co-branding, co-marketing, all collaborative.
Yeah.
So there are some events that we lead and facilitate. There's some events that we co-collaborate on that are already being done, and they bring us in to help. A lot of times they'll have the marketing, because our audience is global. So we have a pretty steep global audience. They really want to utilize that footprint to be able to market these events. Yeah. And so that's what we kind of offer, but also because we're really the only established community for DC-3s and honoring veterans around World War II. Just more recently, when we launched our DC-3 Society last year, we also launched what's called the Young Historians Program. So we have young historians ages 16 to 25 that are actively, my WhatsApp is going off right now because they're constantly communicating and talking, but they are young people that are actively researching and documenting, interviewing surviving veterans.
I love that.
Yes. Great writers. They're just ambitious. They're amazing to work with.
Oh, I was going to say, when you sit down and you talk to them and they tell their stories, I'm like, I hope someone is documenting these stories.
Yes. Yeah. And speaking of cocktails, these veterans are a joy to be around over a drink.
I
much
can only
joy.
imagine.
You get a beer in them, they start singing Blood on the Risers, their cigars, and it is just something
Wow.
else. It's
I think
hilarious.
it's just something that like they don't get to talk about it probably in their everyday life, and to have people that are genuinely interested in hearing these stories. And I think it's great for them as well to be retelling these stories. It kind of gives them that like connection back to who they were, even at 100 years old. Or amazing to be able to.
A lot of pride, and they can realize how, you know, what their impact was.
And you know what I tell them, and I think, you know, we all enjoy flying, right? We all enjoy the joy of general aviation and flying like we do. And so when I talk to them, I always say, like, I'm thankful to you because, you know, that was a turning point for our world. It was World War II. When you look at what went on and what went down, is that if that could have gone another way, you know, the fight could have come to American soil, whatever the case may have been. And so when I look at the opportunity to fly, I do look at that as a very rare freedom in the sense and what they gave to us. I always thank them. It's like, I fly today because you gave that to us. You provided these liberties and these freedoms, civil liberties and freedoms to us that, you know, may not have been here.
Right.
And so it's just so important when they hear that. They're like, you know, that's a good way to put it. We can fight for you.
That's right. So do you have any competitors? I mean, do you have other companies like that you compete with for these events and you kind of bid on these things, or how does that work? They just come to the one.
We don't really, there's really no competition when it comes to wanting to or being able to honor and commemorate veterans. So usually what happens and how, so I do help sometimes manage, you know, when it comes to the air show scene, like getting our airplanes there, working with the warbird organizers like EAA Warbirds and, you know, Sun and Fun and all of these great organizers and air show programs and the producers and the air bosses is really, they'll come and say, hey, do you all want to be involved? How many airplanes can you provide? How many airplanes logistics can we get here? Here's our budget we're working within. Let's make this work. And that's literally how we operate. It's yes, some of our crews do attend ICAST. So, and a lot of times they're attending that because each one of our DC-3s are owned and operated individually. We don't own and operate these aircraft. We are the organization that is the umbrella for them to get support for operational support, training, a structure, right? And then we do cohesively work together to have a presence at AirVenture, to have a presence at Sun and Fun, to have a presence and to memorialize veterans at different flyovers. And so usually we'll have industry that'll come and say, hey, we have a budget here. And we have 3 or 4 DC-3s to help us with this commemoration. So similar. So last year we did 2 July 4th flyovers. So we worked with POTUS's office, then I worked with the DOI, the DOJ, the DOD on how that was going to locate 4 airplanes that did the National Mall. POTUS wanted 4 airplanes. That's part of the World War II emphasis on July 4th. And then we also, at the same time, I had to fly to Truckee, Tahoe and help fly one of the airplanes, as Alyssa knows, Brandon. We had 6 airplanes that were supported to do the Truckee, Tahoe flyover the very same day. So we had 10 of our airplanes doing July 4th commemorative flyovers in a day.
The ICAST was a good thing that you brought up, because a lot of people don't know what that is and what the purpose of that event is. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so ICAST is the organization that predominantly focuses on everything air shows. So you want to, if you're an air show performer, you're an air show act, you are the Warbird community, so to speak, that does even just flyover commemorations in partnership with some of these performances. It's everything entertainment right around the air show circuit. So what performers do, or what we do, is we attend, whether we have a booth or we attend the ICAST conference, which usually takes place in Las Vegas every year. And that conference is where a lot of the performances are scheduled. That's where you meet with the producers, the air bosses, the organizers, and you're really setting up the schedule for what the air show season is going to look like for you. My company, we actually manage and support, and we actually work with some air show talent and air show programs. So we've got folks on the team that have had years of experience working with those. And it's really, how do you set the schedule? Does it work within the budget? These particular air shows will, hire the performers based upon what that sponsorship or budget looks like. So it's a neat conference to obviously unite to the industry. You're bringing all the air show people together. Hey, coming together. What?
We hate coming together.
Flowing. There might be a gala. There's some cocktails, but at the end of the day, it's bringing people together to get this schedule done. I mean, that's what it is. Some people already know some of their schedule ahead of time. They've already set their meetings up, but usually right after that show is when we start dispersing the schedule for the air show season that starts in March of each year.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. I went one time because I was helping a performer, and I had no idea how air shows worked. And basically, I mean, it is like a big hall in the hotel or whatever, and they're just lined up kind of like any convention, and the acts are kind of in the booth, trying to basically sell their act to someone that books air shows, and they have what their rates are and pretty much try to negotiate and figure out if it can work out. And I was like, this is how they do that. I had no idea.
I don't think, did it not happen last year?
No,
but
they did it virtual.
The year prior, I remember seeing like Nathan Hammond and some of these guys that have like cookies made for their booths. And I'm like, hello, why was I not invited? Like,
right?
So I was like, I have to make it there sometime and see how this all goes down, because to have that many amazing shows or people there at one time, like just to connect, I think is really interesting and cool. And
you have quite the range. I mean, you have some people that are just starting out, that just want to be in the air show. And then you have the Blue Angels coming, and they're like, this is our schedule, or, and that it's just, there's quite a range. People you've heard of, people you really haven't, but they really want to get in there and start performing. So it's pretty cool.
And I'm trying to encourage more women to do aerobatics in upset recovery and to really train for this, because if you look at the Patty Wagstaffs and Julie Clark and having retired, is that we don't have a lot of women on the air show circuit anymore. 10 years from now, it's going to look a little different soon. So with more retiring, so it's going to be there's a few women that are out there doing some aerobatic training that I think are looking to the future of one of them I actually mentor. So I keep encouraging her, if this is something you want to do, you could do on the side, you could have an air show program. It would just be good to see more, because when you look at the reason we do air shows, other than, having an event, but the reason we have these air shows, the reason the Blue Angels fly, the reason the Thunderbirds fly is to promote aviation. It's to encourage people to understand what we do and why we do it. Yes, great to show off your talent and entertain people, which is a big reason, but it is to get people excited about aviation. When I was working at Embry-Riddle, we did a Wings and Waves air show every other year, and it was to enroll students into the school. It was that predominant focus was to promote and to push the education of Embry-Riddle and to expose them to this great industry. So we just don't have a lot of women, so it'd be nice to get some more women. And ICAS, which is the International Council of Air Shows, they have scholarships as well as all the other alphabet organizations.
I think it's really awesome, and I'd love to see more women in aerobatics. I don't think I'm probably going to be the one stepping up to do it quite yet, but I think
Alyssa.
I love aerobatics, but for like 10 minutes. I mean, it's going to be like, oh, there she go. She gone. She good. I think, I got my pilot's license. I had never been around other pilots. I didn't know other pilots. I went to my first air show, which was Sun and Fun. 2018 was my first air show of my life. And I sat there and I cried like a little girl just watching this, because I'm like, I just want to fly straight and level. Like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
This is amazing. And to do it. And I remember seeing, I don't know if it was like Skip Stewart or somebody in like a pit or something very snappy, which I hadn't seen. Like I had seen the T6s and like, formation, but I had not seen like these crazy maneuvers. And I'm like, I don't even know how that's done. And how do you not die? Like, I just don't understand.
How do you stay in the box?
Like, right. That's a real question of mine. We were training in the box in Vegas with Taz, and I'm like, what box? Like, I imagine you're in a box, but like, what do you mean I have to maneuver inside of it? And then like seeing your papers that like spell it out, and then they're like, flying it. And I'm like, what does that even mean? So I actually just recently have talked to some people, and I'm like, hey, I want you to take me to a competition, and I want to see how it goes from A to Z. Maybe that'll be like my in of figuring out like I can actually do this, because there's a difference in flying the airplane aerobatic, watching what the airplane's doing aerobatic, and then like making it all happen simultaneously.
Do you ever watch performers? Ken does this too with the Red Line air shows, Ken Reeder, and what they do, or what he's done, I've seen him with John rest in peace, John, his
partner
co-pilot. Yeah. So what they would do at shows is they would actually stand obviously off the tarmac, and they would literally do their entire act on the ground, and they would just be doing this, and I actually just get them a video of them just literally doing their act in the box on the ground together, and it's just so cute.
Yeah.
It is, but it's so like smart because you're visualizing what's happening, because like in it, you're not going to be able to make it up by yourself. Maybe you can, especially, you know, performing an air show together. It just brings that whole new level. And I just think about, like, what if something fails? Like, what is their out? What is, you know, it's just, being a pilot changes your mind. Like, people can go and watch an air show, but to know what goes in behind it, like, you know,
absolutely.
going to the expos to get hired, to get there. Like, I didn't realize, you know, I just always thought, like, oh, they flew their own planes in. Well, I didn't realize they have ferry pilots sometimes. I'm like, hello, I'm waiting.
That saves the time for the talent. When I was helping with the Matt Chapman air shows when Embry-Riddle sponsored aerobatic pilot Matt Chapman. Formerly, he actually retired since. Yeah, we would have pilots ferry his airplane. Dedicated pilots on the insurance that would ferry that aircraft, knew that aircraft well, that extra 330. It saved Matt time. I mean, Matt's an airline pilot, you know, full-time airline pilot from an airline. So outside of his air show schedule, you know, that helps to save them time.
There's not the stress on top of performing and doing a show and being exhausted of flying IFR in these. You know, most of these aircraft, I was thinking about it actually flying the T6 with Aeroshell when we went, that they had like an L3 in their plane. And I was like, you know, I never even thought about, like, what if they get stuck in instrument conditions, you know, like MC, like, how do they get these planes there? Even if it's clear skies in Florida, it's not in Georgia, you know?
Exactly.
So, I mean,
they're doing a lot of overnighting.
A lot of the commemorative Air Force airplanes are not IFR, VFR only, and that's it. And so many of those pilots are volunteers. I mean, I guess they all are. I don't really know if any of them get paid.
They're
but
all volunteer. Yeah.
They got to have a lot of time. You never know if you're flying the plane however many thousand miles somewhere. That could be a really long time-consuming trip.
It can. That's another thing that's very commendable about the efforts we do as the Commemorative Air Force D-Day Squadron, is that it's majority all volunteers that fly these aircraft, maintain the aircraft, and to even get in to be able to fly them, there's a lot of work you have to do before you can even really touch the aircraft, or so to speak, or have that opportunity to play ball, as we say in the warbird community. And the reason for that, people must think, oh, so you really got to put a lot down to do that. I'm like, but you have to build trust. You're flying some incredible, unique, rare aircraft that had once saw combat. In no way we're going to just let random people just get a hold of these airplanes. I mean, considering all the things that have happened with aircraft incidents and accidents, be very cautious of people that you allow fly and operate these aircraft. So it's being a part of it is like we have to get people ingrained into it, help clean the airplane, help fuel the airplane, help before you can really do some of the other nut and gritty stuff, is because you want to build trust. You need to build the integrity with the organization, because like Commemorative Air Force, they're all like chapters, right? So chapters own and operate certain aircraft, and then there's Commemorative Air Force headquarters, or the wings, I guess I should say, the Commemorative Air Force wings. And so each one have their own, sort of set of headquarters standard, and then there's like their set of criteria of what it takes to really operate, maintain, work with those airplanes.
Back to the airbags, because we had talked a little bit before about, I'd love to fly T6 and the air shows and be like aerobatic pilot. And I think only more recently have I thought, okay, it's a lot of work for me to plan a cross-country trip straight level. And I think you got to really put a lot of time into being an aerobatic pilot, practicing, and that's kind of got to be your life if you're going to be really good at it constantly. Staying
proficient and knowing your aircraft, is having everything so perfect. Like,
you can't mess around. You've got to be on top of it, your A game all the time.
That's why they go through training. I mean, it's a recurrent training as well. It's even like flying, like we do a lot of formation flying. So some of our pilots are have, obviously they're aerobatic qualified, so they have all the documentation from ICAS on that, because they'll fly T6s, they'll fly some other performances. But for the DC-3 pilots too, they have what's called the FAST card, that formation card, so that they can fly in very tight formation, just as they've done 77 years ago. When you look at those 19-year-olds flying these DC-3s in Normandy, I mean, like tail to tip, it's just ridiculous how close it's crazy how close we get now, but I mean, they're just so qualified. to be able to that's a maneuver in of itself, is the formation. So
Yeah.
it's one thing to be able to, and then you look at, as Alyssa and I, when we're flying with Airshow, when you look at that performance, I mean, they are tight in formation doing those roles.
Like
doing
we're
those
like a
maneuvers.
foot from each other.
Right.
It's scary.
One bump and we're gonna hit. Like,
Yeah.
Right. That's why they have on an annual basis, sometimes it's even a few times a year, they have what's called formation clinics. And so a lot of aerobatic performers, talent on the airshow circuit, and those that fly formation go to those go to the training for that purpose. Keep current. It's so important, because I mean, you're saving your life and everybody else's.
Totally. My uncle flew some formation flying, and the people, everybody wants to do it. It sounds cool. I'm like, I want to do that. And they were very selective with who could fly formation. They had to practice a certain amount of time, and it was just like, you can't do it. You just haven't practiced enough. It's too risky.
It really can be. That is, if you're not qualified, if you're not credentialed, you should not mess around with that.
You can do a couple times a year and be like, oh, I'm ready to do this now,
For me and like my club planes and things, there's always like, hey, let's fly to lunch, and we'll kind of like fly together. But I'm like, you're good, like 3,000 feet away from me. Like, stay over there. Like, I'm going to do a break now because I don't feel comfortable. It's just so funny to think like how close they are and how uncomfortable I am. And I've done a little bit of training just because to get me a little bit more comfortable. But yeah, it's just insane. Like all these people train so hard to be able to do these things for shows and things for us. And
put them all together. You're so reliant on each one of them to do what they're supposed to be doing and staying on top of the game. One of them screws up and it's bad.
So much trust. It's amazing how much trust you have to have with it. We were flying those airplanes with 23 of them when we were flying across the English Channel. But then, so it's one thing to fly the aircraft and have to worry about maneuverability. For our aircraft, in particular, the DC-3, C-47 troop carriers. So these are the ones that are outfitted for the static line that drop paratroopers in Normandy. We're not just in formation. We're now in formation, and then we're dropping paratroopers.
I had pictures, and I was, how did they not just like mow people over? Like the same level, and then they're dropping. So like, but I'm thinking about it. I'm like, oh Lord.
Yes.
That's exactly what I was thinking when we were talking to Kat. Like, y'all are crazy.
To marry people on our airplanes as well.
I saw that and I was like, okay, that's pretty amazing. I've always the like Ford tri-motors at Oshkosh, and they'll like marry somebody and like do a lap pattern or whatever. And I'm just like, okay, I love airplanes, but I'm probably not going to go that far.
I've officially done a wedding at 8,000 feet in a C-47 at this point. So like, yeah, that was another last minute thing that comes up at events is, hey, Lyndse, we need to go to film that wedding you guys are going to do in your airplane. I'm like, what? What wedding do we have in our airplane? Oh yeah, it just got scheduled. You're marrying a paratrooper, U.S. Army Airborne, and his wife. That's that. So while they're all going to drop skydivers. So okay, all right, cool. Sounds woo.
We talked a little bit about like mentoring and things, and I know you're involved with NBAA and maybe 40 under 40. What would you say is like the best thing for somebody like to get into your role or to get into aviation at all? Like, where do you find mentors? I know we've talked a little bit about it, but I mean, I think that's what we try to do with this podcast is just help people find those outlets and find those mentors in what they're looking for in aviation.
It's a job between both parties. So I look at mentorship as it's definitely a two-way street, and you have to find a mentor that's going to be dedicated to want to communicate with you, because there are people that just like to say they're a mentor. But then there's those that are a mentor and are actively mentoring their mentees, where they're having ongoing conversation, ongoing dialogue about where they are. So I require from all my mentees, they have to complete what's called their flight path. And that flight path is a document where they tell me what their goal is, whether it be in aviation or whatever particular role that they have in aviation. Some of them are 1 to 5 years out of their college degree. Some are still in college coming into aviation. They're not all just business and corporate aviation. They're all different parts. But I always warn them, I'm like, well, if you're going to work with me, I'm going to make you work. And the work is not for my health, it's for their success. And I always tell mentees, I cannot want your success more than you. You're going to have to work for it. People coming into this industry, if you really want to do well, you have to be ambitious. You have to have the desire, and you have to have the passion. If you're coming in this industry to make a lot of money, you're in the wrong industry. I mean, this is not an industry where you want to make the millions of dollars. You can. There are people that do that, but you have to want it bad enough to really fight for it, because there are tense moments. It can get hard. It gets challenging. We all have adversity and obstacles. But I will say that my mentors today are those individuals that had my back, helped me to get from point A to point B, helped me through struggles, helped me to navigate this flight that we call, our journey in aviation. I take it very seriously. I'm not just some desk mentor. I actively participate. Even with Sun and Fun, I invited some of my mentees to Sun and Fun. I provided them some entry tickets to make sure that they had entry, didn't have to pay for it. I'll make sure some of them were provided passes for NBAA and base in Las Vegas. So it's just how can I use, my influence and my abilities to provide resources to them, or some resources to them, so that they can be in front of people, they can network, they can be successful. And the one thing I definitely don't do is give handouts. I don't think giving somebody everything will teach them anything. Sort of have a rule of thumb is that I make them put up the skin in the game as well. If I'm going to help you, you got to put some skin in the game in this, because I think, as we've all seen in our current society today, if you just give people handouts, they just want more. You give people more handouts, they just want more. And we're not teaching our young people anything by doing that. You have to have skin in the game. You've got to want it bad enough. So I think that's what real mentorship is. And if you're looking for a mentor, look for one who's actually going to be there and to keep you ambitious and keep you motivated.
I'm thinking, like, I know how I have a 21-year-old son, I have a 19-year-old son, and a 16-year-old son. I know how these kids are so different than when I grew up, what it's like. One of the things I think that they struggle with is actually communicating face to face with people. They're so used to technology.
Interaction.
I've got to go meet them. I've got to talk to them face to face. I would think that would be something that maybe you're facing with some of the kids coming out of college, trying to teach them how to actually talk to people. It's such a networking community that you really have to know how to do that.
You know how they talk? This is how they talk.
Want to do all the cool things that you do, and I'm like, well, I don't even know how to tell you to get here. You have to put the work in, and you have to make these connections, put yourself in a place to be in front of these people.
You really have to put yourself out there.
And it's hard. And I struggle with it. When I called Lyndse on some things, and I was like, I don't know what to do. And I'm the person that I'm not good enough. So I'm like, I'm just going to back out slowly, or I'm not ready for this. And I think you have to have that, somebody to just push you through it and be like, you got this, fake it till you make it. Having those mentors, I think, have really pushed me to get me out of that little box.
Know your value, know your worth.
When you're into something, it's a whole lot easier to put yourself out there because you want it so bad.
That is true. I always tell my mentees, it's okay to make small investments. I always tell them, make sure you have membership with NBAA, AOPA, EAA, WAI, all of these groups, because all these groups, one, that's your network, building your network. Yeah. Two, it's a very small investment for a much larger return. I can attest to it. We all can sit here and attest to that. But they all
here by yourself. Why not put yourself in this group that, and for the most part, most everybody in aviation wants to see you succeed and wants to push you further. They're not like, oh, you're just a private pilot, you just stay right over there. We all want to help each other. Take advantage of that. Don't ask for a handout. Go after it. Just go for it.
Yeah, you're going to miss a lot of opportunities if you're not involved in those organizations. You won't ever hear about it. You won't ever know anything about it or know the right people.
And the biggest thing I always tell them is, and don't forget, because it says a lot about your character, is show up. Just show up. If you can get to the conference, if you can get to that air show, if you can get in front of that company, just show up. I always tell my mentees, I'm happy to put you in contact with my big network out there. And I do have a very vast network, but I built it over 20 years.
Yeah.
But I will never introduce you to someone if you don't follow through and you
Yeah.
don't show
Right.
up. Because these executives aren't messing around. You don't show up, they're not going to help you and
Sending
work with
a
you.
text message or sending an email is not going to get through to somebody. I'm
Oh,
going to SOS tent and be like, Lyndse, I'm here and I am going up. So, I've met so many people through aviation that you can tell almost immediately whether they are wanting a handout or if they're willing to work for what they want in aviation.
Yes.
I've kind of weeded through that now to help people that are sincere about pursuing something and not just everybody looking for something.
For the college graduates out there that we mentor, we support, and I've said this to a lot of college graduates of Embry-Riddle, is that there's been this mentality that some universities, because of their reputation, well, I have an Embry-Riddle degree, or I have a Penn State degree, I should earn this $75,000 starting salary, and I'm not going to take anything less. Well, that mentality is not going to get you many places.
Yeah.
And these recruiters and these companies already know that mentality. It's called the entitlement mentality. They're not going to hire you. You're not going to get hired into any role when you come. I've known students that have walked into interviews and I've had the company call me after saying, well, you're not going to believe what happened in the interview, is that they were demanding a big salary just because they have a degree from this institution. And they would call us upset about this so that we can then help to address the situation.
Coach them.
with all these students, right? It's coaching. And so if anybody's listening to this podcast and you're a college graduate and you're coming in this industry and you come from one of those great schools, that's great. But that's not going to just give you a big salary coming out of college. You got to earn your way. We've all had to start from the bottom and move up. Well, you have to earn your way.
I have a successful career doing hair. I own a salon, all of that. I had to work from making nothing to building that over 13 years. A little bit of reality hit this year when I was like, I'm going to be in aviation and I'm going to take this job. And when they sent me a joke of an income, I was like, Lyndse, you will not believe this. And I think Lyndse kind of talked me off of my pedestal up here. But honestly, it's a totally different kind of tiered thing that I'm used to. I've been self-employed. But at the same time, I think it made me realize you just don't walk into something and own it. Yes, there is value and you have to know your value and worth and what you're bringing. But at the same time, you don't just get handed everything. And I mean, that was a great lesson for me this year. Something will work out and everybody just has to keep pushing to that next best thing. I'm not over here oh, they didn't want to give me any money. I've got to work harder. I've got to do more. I have to invest in myself. And I think we all look for other people that are like-minded in that. And so that's when we want to help people or mentor them or be able to put them in connection with the right people.
Yeah.
And you have to go for a job that does fit, because not every job works for the same person, right? So it's not a one size fits all in our industry. Is what works for one may not be the personality or the fit for others. I know with our Part 91 operators, so I work with about 75 flight departments, Part 91. When we look at talent and we recruiting the talent in these large Fortune 50 or Fortune 500 companies, is they're not just looking for flight hours. They're looking for your personality. They're looking for your character. Obviously, what else can you bring to the table? What's that integrity? So I would say one of my mentees is a perfect example of this that I've known for some years now is Kim Kish, who has done the social media for women in corporate aviation over the course of the year. She also was on our dream team for helping with the flight around the world, Dream Soar. So I watched her grow over the years. And then I'm up with my flight instructor in Connecticut one night, and I knew she was interviewing. I knew she was looking for another opportunity. She'd been working for Tailwind at White Plains in New York. And she called, she goes, you're not going to believe it. You're not going to believe it. I got the job. And she got hired with AbbVie out of Chicago, flying the G650, having went from Embry-Riddle 172s to the TBM with Tailwinds. Now, and mind you, her flight hours didn't reflect what they were looking for, but it was just what else she brought to the table. Yeah. And so when pilots come to me and say, I really want to get hired by this Part 19 operator, but I don't have the flight hours, I'm like, well, don't let that hold you back. You can still apply. You can still put yourself out there. You're not going to be, it's not like you're coming and demanding the job, but at least put your name out there, put your name in the hat in that sense, because it may be your personality, it may be what else you're bringing to the table that they're going to hire you for or consider you for. And if they don't consider you now, they could be, we'll think about her for the next round. Right?
Yeah.
I think there's this chart of, here's your flight hours and here's your personality and what else you bring to the table. And, it kind of evens out when I stress, like when I'm doing scholarships and things to I look at people's social media, like, are they positive? What are they posting? What are they doing? What are they doing in aviation besides flying to get hours? Like, are they involved? So it's like, I think about that too. It's like, I only have 300 hours. If I work towards getting more and kept working on my marketing or keep working on whatever, something's going to eventually hit and be exactly what fits my life. And you just got to keep that goal in mind.
Yes. I mean, set your goals high and know that there's a role out there for everybody in our industry. And that's important because you can use time building, you can build time with a Part 135 operator. I mean, there's so many different operations out there that give you the benefit of building time. You're growing with them, you're growing yourself. And then, so if your end goal is that big Part 91 operator or to fly for an entertainer or whatever that is to fly for at that level with the bigger equipment, you'll get there because you're just building your flight path towards that position. So
it's not just the flight hours, it's just all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, you're growing just personally and all this other stuff too.
Yeah, with Kim's story, it was a lot of the networking of women in corporate aviation that helped her to get in the door at that operator.
Mm-hmm.
So, it was an introduction that was made. And that's what I helped do, is try to make the introductions. You can lead a horse to water, you can't make them drink. I will give you that introduction. Like I said before, you got to follow up and you got to take it from there. That is all on you after that.
Yeah.
Just keep going.
For yourself, like, I know you've done some flight training and you're kind of doing that with the sacrifice to soaring stuff, but like, where are you at? Where do you see yourself going? Like, are you grooming yourself to do something different?
Yes.
What is your goal?
With my company, we tend to have to get to the point A to point B in a certain amount of time. And I would say that the pandemic has taught me a lot about how I really don't want to continue flying commercial aviation as much if I can help it. But also because of the aircraft that we do fly, we fly them into the shows, we fly them to these events. I eventually want to get typed in the DC-3, and then we have the opportunity to also return the aircraft back to Normandy at some point. So my next goal is to be able to crew the aircraft and fly the aircraft over the Northern Atlantic and the original Blue Spruce route that was once flown by our veterans of the Greatest Generation. I also love tailwheel flying. So actually, when I started back to my training, I actually started back in a Cessna 175 tailwheel. And it's just something to be said about that type of flying. It makes you a great proficient pilot. If anybody's listening and you're currently on tricycle gear, which I fly tricycle too, the learning curve of tailwheel is just something else. Even when I went back to tricycle, I was doing a lot more right rudder than I normally would need to. And I will admit that.
I'm taxiing. I'm like doing that. I'm like, why are you doing that, Alyssa? You don't need that much input, okay?
Yes, fun. It's a great way to fly. So we the company actually has a plan to eventually purchase a small aircraft in the future. So we're currently talking to an aircraft broker on that opportunity, who's also part of our team. That is something that's in the works, and utilizing that aircraft to get to the point A to point B or get to a client. We tend to do some long road trips, and that gets mentally exhausting.
Yeah, definitely.
So it'd be nice we want to support general aviation further. It's something, as a discussion I had with King Schools. King Schools is also a support from sacrifice to soaring, but we need to keep promoting and moving and growing general and business aviation.
Where are you based?
I'm out of Raleigh, North Carolina.
Aviation is ramping back up. General aviation, I'm really excited for this year. I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed with having been so slow last year and kind of revamping everything. But then this year I feel like is on cocaine and we're all everywhere again. And I'm like, okay, Alyssa, focus. focus.
We're all in the high.
What is something that you think it has been better in the last year for change or in the future of aviation, or something that needs to be changed either?
That kindness is a two-way street.
Absolutely.
And that with everything that's been going on lately, I will say a lot of my close friends know where my mind is right now, and why I have been really pushing to stay in the air and to really celebrate our freedoms. Understanding that we all may be different in how we think or where our mind is on certain current world events. It is a two-way street, and we need to be more mindful of one another, and we need to have healthy conversations rather than debating one another. That's something that I saw over this last year. Was I minored in human psychology, and the change of human behavior was something that I saw this year. And at one point I put my head in my hands just doing that. And when I realized, Natalie, when you talk about what's one of my favorite things that I like to do, and the reason I like to work with our veterans is because I like to celebrate our freedoms as well. And I would like us to continue to do that as a nation, but also as people, and celebrating each other's freedoms and how we see our freedoms, and making sure that we're having healthy conversation, but being kind about those conversations, right? No matter what side we're on, or where our mind is, or how we're handling a certain situation. It's just, kindness is free. And for those that can, give a little more. There's a lot of organizations out there. There's a lot of entities that really hurt in this pandemic. I work with a lot of nonprofits. I did a ton of pro bono work this past year just to help organizations shift and pivot in how to diversify their revenue streams and their income and donor revenue, and how to do things a little different during these unprecedented times. Just pick up the phone and call people. Pick up the phone and thank people. Show gratitude. Show humanity.
Writing down my gratitudes every morning, and it just puts me in like a better mindset. Even though this year was so hard, I think for so many people, it's actually made me a better person, just because I'm like, I have so much to be thankful for. Like, why am I complaining? Like, why, but it's that mindset that if we take it there, it's going to lead us down this dark alley, where if we have this mindset, and helping other people, I think is something that really makes me happy, is being able to give back and help people. And I might not have a penny to my name at the end of the week, but I feel good, I
actually heard, I know we should end soon, but I heard a thing is there a study I heard on the radio that during the past year they had surveyed people, and most people felt that this past year affected them negatively. And I was like, I hate to hear that, because I feel like I learned so much about myself and really changed my perspective on what's really important to me. I felt like it was challenging, but I feel like in the end I came out with my values a little more in line, and me figuring out exactly what I need to be spending my time doing. I think I benefited from it in many ways that I wouldn't have if it hadn't happened. I would hope that people would take negative experiences and try, and it's so much of a mindset thing. Yes. And try to turn it into constantly, looking for the positives and using those times and challenges to better yourself and to think of things in a different way, a more positive way.
I agree. It's really a shifting and pivoting your mindset. Absolutely agree, Natalie.
And you're in control. You're in control of if you go down that dark path and you start that ball rolling of negativity, it's just going to build.
Spiral.
Yes.
Mine was more of a roller coaster, maybe a little hand flying in the parking lot even.
You were doing your own air show over there.
I'm really weird. Just get used to it. 2 last questions, and then we'll let you have your night free. If you could have any airplane, not a DC-3, but if you could have any airplane, what would it be?
Oh man, you just took the one airplane away from me. My favorite is the Falcon 7X.
Question 2. If you could have any cocktail, what would it be?
Moscow Mule.
Ending on that note, my glass is empty. This has been a great episode, but I think the kitchen is calling.
Jet fuel only.
I have coffee.
Oh, yes.
It's like a nice balance going from coffee to drinks. It depends on the day what time that switches over, but.
Totally.
I mean, if we're working from home.
Who's to say a glass of wine doesn't happen a little earlier?
We might be more productive.
That's all right.
Thank you so much. And this has been a great episode of Cockpits and Cocktails. Let our guests know where they can find you.
Lyndse, right?
It's your air show name.
Instagram personal account is Costa Bill Travel. I have my website. It's fundavconsulting.com. It's FUNDAV consulting.com. Facebook, I'm on it all. I have to be on it all because I have to work on it all. I am on the platform.
We hope the best year for you yet. We will be seeing you soon, hopefully.
That's right.
Love it, ladies. Cheers.
Cheers.